Hello, bonsai friends. This is Evan Pardue of Underhill Bonsai, and welcome to episode 16 of our podcast here. There's a little bit of a change up. We have some great news, but I'll get to that in just a moment. But this time I'm joined by both of my lovely co-hosts, joined by Mike Lane of Kitsune Bonsai. How you doing, Mike?
Hey guys, how's it going?
And my other co-host, Carmen Lesko-Vinansky. Oh, was it close?
Tell Not really.
Damn it. All right, whatever. Okay, maybe next attempt. Carmen is the current apprentice at Michael Hagedorn's Cartagus Bonsai Garden in Portland. How you doing today, Carmen?
I am well.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Anytime. That's what I'm here for, to ask people how they're doing. Today we'll be discussing starting with young material versus older material, and if we can reverse engineer older material and learn from working with those, or how's working with younger material more beneficial. Sound about right, guys? Sounds fun?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Before we get started with that, I do need to mention that our podcast is sponsored by Underhill Bonsai Nursery, Louisiana's premier bonsai nursery. If you'd like to support our show, please subscribe. Please follow on your favorite listening platform. And make sure we say that. It helps the show out, gets the algorithm up. So that'd be awesome. Go to your platform underneath our name. You should see follow or subscribe. Smash it. We were talking about that earlier. Don't smash the phone. Yeah,
just smash it.
just press firmly on the phone and it will subscribe for you. I promise.
There you go.
If you would like to follow me on Facebook or Instagram, you can go to my name, Evan Pardue, or you can go to Underhill Bonsai on Facebook, follow us and like us on there. We also have an Instagram page, like I said before, on the same name, or you can go to underhillbonsai.com and you'll see our storefront and all the good stuff on there, blog posts that I do. For Kitsune Bonsai, for Mike, you can go to, did I get it wrong? Get it wrong.
Kitsune
Bonsai. Facebook and Instagram, you can go follow Mike Lane's Kitsune Bonsai there. And also you can sign up. Do you have any newsletters or anything on yours, Mike?
We will be doing newsletters because we have a whole list of classes that we're offering. But awesome. Currently we don't have a newsletter now. Okay, well, there will be a chance for that in the future. But he also has merch available at his website, kitsunebonsai.com. Go over there and check it out because Mike has some upcoming Zoom classes. For beginners, it's going to be $20 per participant. Is there a max limit on your participant count? I don't think so. As far as I know, I do think it's like 100 people for a regular Zoom. But I'm not sure on the maximum. So
max it out, guys. Get 100 people in Mike's class.
Yeah, we would really like that because this is a $20 beginner class over Zoom. So it gives you kind of the fundamentals. Obviously, we won't be working on a live tree. But it's kind of very affordable to kind of get in, get the general knowledge, the general rules, and build your fundamentals. So join us on February 18th.
There you go. Yeah, I'm saluting general knowledge and some general knowledge. Salute you.
I was going to do that. I'm glad you did it.
Nice.
So we're over here saluting because it doesn't take anything more than owning a phone. You can have it on your computer. But if you have a phone, please go check out Mike's class. It's $20. Best $20 you spent on learning bonsai basics. For Carmen, she is one of the co-founders of the Purple Pot Society. Check out the National Women's Bonsai Club at purplepotsociety.org for more information. You can become a Purple Pot Society member, and there is no specification on gender. You can be a male, you can be female, female pot Bonsai Society, or no specified. You can support. It's very affordable. I think it's $35 for the year. Correct. That's an awesome rate. You get access to classes from women bonsai artists. You get to attend shows. I mean, I think at the ABS show y'all have a something coming up where it's specified.
We'll be doing a panel on women in bonsai at ABS.
There you go.
Is that the ABS that's in Austin this year?
Denver.
Denver. Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
We're talking about possibly going. I think I'm going to Denver's ABS this year. So you guys can come say hey to me and Carmen. Mike, if he if he's going to go. We'll talk to him later about that, obviously. But also, Carmen has a Facebook and an Instagram. It's best if you go to her Instagram page called Becoming Bonsai and follow her there. If you want to see her bonsai work at Cartagus, sorry. And then one more mention, we have a Patreon, and it's going to be under our new name, which I'm excited to announce. But you can go to our Patreon and become a Bonsai Bud for $1. Just $1. And you can support the show. It does more than you think. We're over here working on bonsai, working our fingers to the bone. No, I'm just joking. No, but we love bonsai. We want to talk about bonsai. It just supports a little bit. We will become your best bonsai bud for $5. There's one more tier on there, but either of those, if you want to submit listener questions, we will answer your questions on air. The podcast has its. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I just had a question. What do the 2 tiers entail? I'm very curious.
One says the first one for $1, you will become a bonsai bud, and we will shout you out. Oh, we do have a Patreon. We have one Patreon. I had to shout out for this episode. It's gonna be great. It's coming up soon. But we will shout out your name at the beginning of an episode as soon as you become a $1 patron. But if you're a $5 Bonsai Best Bud, we will shout you out at the beginning of each episode. And if it's your birthday, let us know. We'll even say happy birthday to you. I think that's a good plan.
Sweet.
We'll prioritize your questions. So become a bonsai bud. And here's the exciting news. The podcast finally has merch. By the time this episode drops, there will be merch at hitsunebonsai.com. Mike will have a separate section. You can go over there. We're going to put a link on our Facebook page that's going to be started. We're going to have a link listed in the comments in our description below this episode. You can go over there, buy a shirt, support us from there as well. And the shirt designs were made by bonsai friends of mine. So we got some unique, fun designs, and also are sporting our brand new label. So the biggest chunk of news here is we are rebranding the show. We're renaming the show to...
Dun, dun, dun.
Yep.
Sorry, that was supposed to be a drum roll.
No, there's some kind of drum roll or something. We're rebranding to Little Things for Bonsai People, the podcast. Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah.
Little
it's
things.
The little things.
Little things.
It is the little things.
So, yep. So if you want to call us Little Things or just Little Things for Bonsai People, that is going to be our new name. We had to change the name because it was brought to my attention that formerly Bonsai Southeast, which we still have the logo. We'll do some prints of those shirts just so people can own it if they want to. They can remember that sweet, sweet show I had a little while back. But no, it came to my attention that Carmen does not live in the Southeast. So if we're going to include her in our circle of bonsai friends here, we're going to have to be like Bonsai Southeast, Bonsai Midwest. And which just,
exactly.
just doesn't flow.
Currently,
well.
Bonsai Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
And I think for some of the things, we have planned to, like bringing in artists from, across
all
the
over.
pond and whatnot. Yeah, all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
I think it makes more sense to kind of rebrand and go a different route.
Yeah. And like we had formerly on Bonsai Southeast, I had guests in the past. There's some sweet episodes back there. There's one with Jonas Dupuis. There's a 2-part one with Harry Harrington. There's one with a couple of other bonsai people and artists. And just go check them out. I don't want to sit here and name them all off, but you know what I mean. But if you can't do any of those things that we aforementioned, and the exciting news of our name, our rebrand, doesn't excite you enough to buy a t-shirt from us, then just go over and please subscribe to our show, follow somewhere on your favorite listening platform, whether it be Spotify, Google Podcasts. I use Stitcher. Stitcher's an awesome free app. If you guys are not using that, it's a great way to organize your podcast as well. Just subscribe, and we will show up every time a new episode comes up. Turn on notifications so it dings you whenever we have an episode, and you can hear our lovely voices each time. So glad we could get through all of that. That was a lot of information to put down.
Whew.
Yeah,
It was. Whew, I'm ready.
Yeah. I'm getting sweaty. I'm so ready to talk about bonsai now. No. So anyway, yeah. So we're going into young versus old material. This was actually something that. Wait. I had to shout out our one bonsai bud.
Oh
on
yeah,
Patreon.
don't forget.
Did you have a different handle or something? I don't know what you put your name down as. I don't even know when your birthday is. I I guess we'll have to wait for that. Hold on a second.
I didn't put my birthday down, or they didn't put their birthday down.
If you wouldn't know, we like to play jokes on each other here, and Carmen is our first Patreon subscriber. Thank you, Carmen, for supporting the show with your
You're
$1
so
donation.
welcome.
That's $12 for the year.
Yeah.
Wow. That's gonna
So
go along with.
you'll get to ask a question once we get to that part of the show.
You're right.
Today's bonsai topic was brought to you by Carmen. So, Carmen, can you explain to us what today's topic is? Because it was your idea to do this episode.
Yeah. So something that let me get back to the beginning of my thought. So when you and Mike were talking about the things you wish you had known getting into bonsai, there was some talk about starting with material that, you didn't necessarily care about, or young material, so that if you killed it, it didn't really matter too much. And I think that's totally valid. Like, don't get me wrong there. But I was also thinking that I've heard of some folks starting with more mature material, and I myself started on mature finished trees. And I think that it was a different way to learn bonsai, I think, than a lot of people do. So I was kind of going back and forth in my brain as to what are the pros and cons of working with mature material versus young material, and can you learn the same things off of both? Is there a benefit to working with one versus the other? And ultimately, I mean, like with most of the things, when we say, is this better or is this better? The answer is they're both great, but we can talk about why those things are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're saying that you're working on mostly like finished trees. Define like finished for the listeners a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
So when I started bonsai, I was working with the University of Michigan and managing that collection. So the trees that I was working with weren't stock trees. They weren't young plants. They were trees that had been bonsai for a long time. And so it was maintaining the shapes, wiring the trees, pruning the trees, repotting the trees that had, like I mentioned, already been bonsai for X number of years. And I learned on those trees for probably, I don't know, the first 5 or more years until I got some, young stuff of my own. And when I started working with Michael doing his seasonal courses, at that point, I started working with some stock material, and I found that it was really different than maintaining mature material. It almost felt kind of backwards. So I thought that was an interesting difference. And I've also noticed that sometimes working with more mature material, something that's been a bonsai for a long time, you get more of a chance to practice your pruning or practice your wiring because there's so much there on that tree. Whereas with young material, sometimes, you're only cutting 2 branches or you're only wiring 1 or 2 things. So yeah, I just wanted to explore that a little bit more.
So an older tree is going to grow much different from a younger piece of material from multiple different standpoints too.
Right.
We have different degrees of root systems on these types of materials, whether it be an underdeveloped root system on a young stock piece. It might only have like the spokes of like what could be the future Nabari, and it could develop into a matted old root system of an older bonsai. So I think that's one of the things that stands out to me the most when it comes differentiating old bonsai stock versus young. Youngs, they're just going to have really, really sparse root systems. And what I mean by that is a lot of the stuff too is, well, one of the things that I tell people when I'm starting to work with someone who's brand new to bonsai, I say, what is going on with the root system, what the root system looks like. It's a reflection of what the top of the tree is. If it's young and there's not a lot of branching and there's still a lot of building to do on that bonsai, you are going to build the Nabari, build the branches, build out that tree one piece by piece. With an older piece of material, how do you take an older piece of material and try to re-engineer that older piece of material with a really established root base? So I think that's one of the challenges there when it young versus older material. And that's how I kind of differentiate it.
Actually, that's a really good point. One of the things that I like working with both. You know, I really love collected material. I think that's the creme de la creme. Um, but I also will say that working something from the very beginning saves a lot of time. And so people often think like, oh, working with the cutting, working with the seedling, that's going to take too long. But think about how much time goes into fixing flaws when we buy older material, especially if it's not bonsai material. If we go to like an old landscape nursery and we buy something that's very, very old, very rarely is it going to kind of be confined to what we're looking for bonsai. You know, very rarely is it going to have everything we need to make bonsai. So one of our first things that we often do when we get new material and we start training it is we have to cut a lot of stuff off, a lot of quote unquote flaws. And so my argument is, how fast would you move if you never made those flaws to begin with? If every move you made was just progress forward towards an inevitable design. So then you're not spending years healing old wounds and trying to fix old nasty nabaris and like trying to do all this old stuff. You are working always towards progress. And so what I found, especially with Shohin trees, is that I get to completion a lot faster. It's like a tortoise beats the hare kind of thing, as far as like where everybody's trying to heal trunk wounds and whatnot. I kind of soar past that, dealing with like a small cutting or a seedling. And so I know that's not going to be the same when comparing that to the complexity and like the moshikomi of like an old mature tree. But it is, I do think, a valid argument as to why you don't want to just necessarily always go for the bigger, thicker, older material.
Oh, for sure. I
Yeah, go
think
ahead, Carmen.
too, sorry, I think too, maybe more of my point is not necessarily should you build a tree from young material versus old material, but how, when you're learning to do bonsai, can you learn
Okay.
let me think, can you learn enough technical skill off of off of young material as you could off of something that's
I know where
already
you're going with that. Yeah.
mature?
I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I see
So
what you're
sorry,
saying.
a little bit different than I think.
No, I
Um,
gotcha.
yeah,
We
yeah.
turning on our teaching brains there for a second.
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
No, no, definitely no. I would definitely agree. No, you definitely don't learn as much. One of the things I was always taught to learn in bonsai was immersion. You know, you
Mhm.
should be as immersed as possible in the hobby. And a big part of that is finding old mature trees to work on. You know, if you really want to learn bonsai, you really want to learn it, then you do need to work on mature trees. I mean, that's the reality of it. You'll be waiting, 10 to 15 years for that lesson if you're trying to start with something new.
Mhm.
So,
that's the Japanese way. You're kind of
Yeah.
experiencing that, Carmen, with
Oh
your
gosh. Yes.
apprenticeship.
Right.
That's you go in and you go in blind. With knowledge behind you or without, and then you just start working on trees that you're like, holy crap, I'm going to kill this thing. It's kind of what people that are unfamiliar with bonsai, when it kind of
Mhm.
pushes you past that point of fiddling around with younger plants that are more expendable than obviously than old pieces
Mhm.
that might even be trademark pieces to a culture or a region of bonsai. So, and yeah, I think approaching older material and just giving someone shears and saying, all right, you're going to leaf cut this today. You're going to thin it and leaf cut it so that you can get light in there. That's easier to approach on a tree like that,
Mhm.
on a super dense tree, or you just give them tweezers. Say you're going to be plucking buds today, and that's going to change the motion of the wheels. Obviously, it's going to make them slow down, really take their time, and really look at an older piece of material and be much more respectful. At least you would hope.
Mhm.
Some people might get overzealous and think they're going to redesign the tree, which is something that your teacher or the word's escaping me for whenever you're an apprentice.
your Oyakata.
Your oyakata. Yeah,
Oyakata.
hopefully your oyakata will break you of that habit. Hopefully not break your hands. you do something wrong. But no, yeah, if you have good guidance, I think learning on older material is probably, like Mike said, it's probably the best way to do it. Full immersion. You're going hard in the paint for high end quality bonsai, world class style bonsai. But when it comes to younger material, it makes me think about when people come into the bonsai nursery over here at Underhill, and I have a little bit of an immersion feel because I do have nicer trees, but I do have a lot of in training, a lot of teaching material type trees. And so, what do you tell somebody who comes into the bonsai nursery for the first time and they're like, I want to learn bonsai? And Mike, you've worked at Weigert's for a good while too, down in Fort Myers. So what do you usually tell people like that?
Honestly, we usually start them out with a beginner course, and I'm going to be honest with you. The beginner course usually leads you astray, in my opinion, first. Some of the things it teaches you is, like, my idea as an educator is to teach you as many skills as possible in the shortest amount of time. So we usually start people out, with the old school, go grab a tree, you're going to style it, you're going to pick a style, you're going to wire it out. And then you're basically going to learn how to wire, repot the tree, and do a lot of the things that going forward we're going to say is incorrect. A lot of my more advanced students, I have to unteach, kind of break down that swing and change everything. I change everything from a triangular, building everything into triangles, to building everything into semicircles, is another big one. But one of the reasons I do that is I find that you can give people too much. You can make it too daunting, and you can lose a lot of people that could otherwise enjoy the hobby, if they were just kind of, how do I word this? And I hate to say this, but if they were kind of coddled a little bit. We are not Japanese people, and the Japanese are very, very culturally aware of the fact that when you engage in one of their arts, you're starting at the very bottom. And so I take kendo, or I used to do kendo. I do iaido now. And one of the things that's different about kendo here versus kendo in Japan is that for the first 4 to 5 years, you would never even hold a sword in Japan. You would just work on footwork. And what American is really going to stick with a hobby for that long without seeing some kind of fruition, to some kind of results? And so I found a kind of a gentler approach where I kind of get them into bonsai, teach them how to wire, teach them how to repot. And then if they're still interested, if they want more, then we go down the rabbit hole of like clip and grow, of advanced technique, advanced shapes, more avant-garde stylings, things like that. But I don't know. I've spent a lot of time teaching this, and I go back and forth with that,
There's a lot that goes into beginner courses, and I think there's a good benefit to giving that beginner course, because I'm sure you've seen multiple people do the same class again. Even though they've been before, they'll sit through it again, because hearing it again might just get through this time. I've gone through and have repeated myself with techniques and stuff, but it's not a bad thing, because you're right, Mike, it is a lot of stuff. And keeping them engaged is the most important part. I definitely agree on that. So for instance, just my experience here, I have people come into the nursery and they ask me, so what do I do to get started here? And, suggesting a beginner class is a great thing. But I tell them, from my standpoint, buy a bunch of little trees that you like and just grow them. It's kind of like that whole thing where you're like, you only do footwork. I'm like, just take these trees and let them grow. If you can't get them to grow for you, and they're suffering, and you're missing watering, you're missing fertilizer, then I don't tell them you don't have no business doing bonsai because you can't keep, but I tell them, keep it alive, keep it healthy, growing the species that you're interested in. And then you will have a tier list of young material that are easy to work with. And there's obvious ones, and then there's less obvious ones that I kind of call like the like the dream team of bonsai species. People will come in looking for like the flowering cherry blossoms and you know, the really, really finished looking Japanese black pine. And I'm like, ooh, slow down a little bit, you know. So that's kind of one of the things that is kind of harsh in knowing is like, you should go home and try to keep this tree alive first. Now in a world where you could afford to buy a finished specimen tree, then that kind of changes gears a lot too. Because one of the things I offer here is if somebody wants to buy a really nice, for instance, we have a lot of bald cypress. So we produce a lot of those, and then they go out to people's house, and then they will have me, or if you're in any other area, like a bonsai professional, come help you maintain. And I know, Carmen, you're familiar with that type of work, and so is Mike. So that's one way. But is that still learning bonsai? Is that still a good immersion enough? You know?
Yeah, this is a good point. I guess I'm coming from a place of when bonsai is your career, you have to learn it and you have more opportunities to work with these types of trees. But I guess, yeah, it's really tricky to find that kind of material that you can work with. Because, right, you don't want to sell somebody a really nice tree if they can't even keep a tree alive. And I've had this conversation multiple times with students of, well, what's the best way to teach bonsai? Because there's the people who are really serious and want all of the scientific horticultural knowledge along with the technique. But then there's the people who just want to know how to repot and wire a tree. And they're going to do that regardless of what you say. And their tree will probably die within the first year. And they'll be like, oh, I can't do bonsai and be done. So it's this constant, back and forth of how do you bring people into it and how do you teach people? And
so I do think that that's a valid point. That is the trickiest part, the teeter-totter that we kind of balance ourselves on when we're teaching, is how much do you give people? You know, it's a daunting art, and it takes a lifetime to master it, if you even get that far, you know. So how do you tell somebody that? How do you tell them that, hey, you're going to get into this and you'll probably never see the end? You know, I like to kind of get them at least interested into working with the trees, you know, starting to be immersed in the culture a little bit. And over time, they start appreciating more and more aspects of it. A great example is like, I didn't really like Suiseki when I got into bonsai. I didn't get it. You know, but being surrounded by it and seeing it over and over and over and being immersed in the culture made me start to understand it. And through understanding, you start to like things, you know. So usually once you have context, you start to appreciate things more. So it's certainly something that I value as an educator is starting from the ground, building them up with young material, old material, whatever. But it's a tricky teeter-totter for sure.
Yeah. And I guess I'm just going back to the resources thing too. I think that's something that as far as in the ballpark of me and Mike go, having resources locally, having somebody that not only provides beginner courses or intensives or opportunities for learning different techniques. And I think something else that's valuable to clients that I work with is opportunity for tree storage. I think that's another one of the things that kind of deters people from getting young material or an older tree is, I'm going to buy this tree, but I got this trip. I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. Now what do I do? And that's kind of like getting into the swing and the understanding and the lifestyle of bonsai. That's another tough part. We're straight a little bit farther away from the young versus old stock. What would you start with? But you know, we could circle back around to it. But I think that kind of wrapped it up too is like resources, I think, is important. But yeah, let's swing it back around to young versus old. So we can each answer this question. It's something in my mind that's been kind of going around as we've been talking about this. I'll ask you first, Mike. If you were to walk into a bonsai nursery, which tree are you going for? Are you looking, and from your experiences where you're at, older tree or younger tree? What do you, when you walk in there? What's your first intentions?
Old
Old.
is definitely, yeah. So there's a concept in Japanese bonsai that's not taught a lot here called moshikomi. And so moshikomi is a tree, a bonsai tree, essentially reaching maturity, where any idea of its training is basically worked out of the tree. So a tree with moshikomi would be if we saw a pine tree that had plate bark on its branches, where the actual branches are now thick with bark.
Not just
That's
the
moshi.
trunk.
Correct. That's moshikomi, and that is takes an incredible amount of time. On some of these pine trees, it's multi-generational, and so those are the trees that demand the most respect, the most reverence. Those trees that have reached that moshikomi and have that element of age. Because remember, the whole reason that we're supposed to be doing this is wabi-sabi. And wabi-sabi deals with the fact that everything is impermanent, incomplete, and imperfect. And so through understanding that, we understand that everything is impermanent. And so if we can have something last for a long period of time, it's highly valuable. It's highly valuable because it's not going to last forever. So, age is trumps everything, in my opinion. Trumps everything. Trumps cool designs, trumps everything.
Yeah. So Carmen, when you walk into Bonsai Nursery, what are you seeking out, basically?
Definitely something older, usually something that has some kind of interest, and maybe a Yamadori or something that's been in a pot for a long time. Again, for those same reasons. Also, I just like working with really complex material. So something young isn't going to excite me as much as something that I can really put a lot of wire on or do a lot of pruning on.
You bring up a new term too there, Yamadori. That kind of goes into its own separate category of material as well. Whereas Mike's mentioning the mochikome old bonsai, maybe that bonsai's been in training for a long time, and like you said, a lot of all the kinks have been worked out. Whereas a Yamadori comes with all the kinks, but also it comes with its own special type of mochikome that's not trained by hand.
Now the question is, should we open that can of worms talking about Yamadori versus...
That's another topic.
I don't know. Let's go there.
We're trying to keep our episode links shorter, so yeah, we can do that one later. But yeah,
Okay.
there is a huge difference between Yamadori versus young versus old. So yeah, that's another
both,
topic.
Yeah, because it's both. It's kind of both at the same time.
It's both. Yamadori is one of my favorite ones, but we could talk about that because don't get me started.
I mean, maybe what I'm looking for is the Yamadori that's already been styled too, right?
Yes.
So it could be that. It could be that. Something that's So
but let's seriously put a pin in that, Evan, because I think that's a good topic for another episode. Is we got to talk about Yamadori one of these days.
Yeah, very soon. Maybe even the next one. But we'll see. We will see.
Yeah,
okay.
Whenever.
But yeah, in circling around to me, I'll ask myself, hey, Evan, what would you look for in a bonsai nursery?
Evan, what would you look for in a bonsai nursery?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, Mike. I didn't know if it was my turn yet. I was waiting patiently. No, if I were to go into another bonsai nursery, I would be looking around for sort of a mixed bag of what you guys are looking for. The Yamadori that's got a little bit of work, or maybe an older tree. I like to find an older tree that has obviously had some work, but there's something I could do at that moment to make a drastic change in its design and then be able to move it in a different direction. And then also respect the previous bonsai practitioner's work in hand. I want to leave a bit of their history behind and then move it forward. That's kind of stuff I kind of pick out. And also, I will go for younger material as well, depending on, and this is something I'm trying to refine down at our nursery here at Underhill, is starter stock that's not just pencil straight, taperless, boring. We got stuff that's got curves to it. Get your pick the litter of good starter shohin, good starter trees that you stick in the ground, stuff like that.
That's good. There's a big lack of actually good starter material out there. And so the more nurseries that can create something fun to start with that's still young and you can still design yourself, that might be one of the reasons why I don't gravitate towards that stuff, is because it's there's no interest there for me as far as movement or whatever.
Side note, how to create another podcast episode topic, how to create young stock that would be interesting for future stock. I think
Good
that's something I really enjoy. I think that's a whole podcast episode.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Kind of just touching on that though, I would say just take young stock and start either cutting it or putting movement in it. That's your two options.
That's the rudimentary step to the future topic of that. So Carmen, since this was your question, is there anything you want to explore further with young versus old stock, learning bonsai on those pieces of material?
I don't know. I'm having second thoughts about this whole topic.
We're already a good ways into this.
I know. Yeah, I guess I'm thinking really basically, like when you want to learn wiring, when you want to learn pruning, you're probably just going to learn faster on something that has more branches and more leaves. And
I agree with that.
Maybe it's just that simple. But I mean, you just learn different things from whether you're working with something that's mature or whether you're working with something that's young. And I think that if you're really into bonsai and you really want to learn, that whole immersion thing really is important. So working with a teacher who has that kind of material, volunteering at a public garden that has bonsai where you can work on their trees, just finding your group, your club, and working with people there who have the more you can do it, the faster you'll learn.
And that's also a great point, Carmen. And I think I lost the yarn a little bit each time it came to me, but
that's all right.
But what I'll say,
that phrase made me laugh. The cat people on the podcast movie here, like just being that dog guy, you lost the yarn.
No, but I mean, I remember thinking back to when I started at Eric's, it was working a lot on his trees. And I guess I wasn't really thinking of that, but a big part of my training came from wiring out these immensely ramified trees and, wiring them. I mean, he would tell me I'd sit there for 8 hours at times, on these big trees and just wire out a tree. So that's a great point. Like even in a simpler aspect, just talking about the number of branches to wire on mature material, number of branches to prune, number of branches to kind of maintain the vigor on. Like there's an art to keeping a number of branches. The tree doesn't want to split the energy that much. It wants to find a leader and put it in there. And so, being able to keep healthy ramification is also a tool that's more easily learned on mature material.
Yeah, I think the benefit too is that when you just have one or two young trees, I don't know about you guys, but I get itchy fingers. I just want to cut everything and pluck everything and do all of the work all the time. And so people just keep going back and picking at it until the tree eventually dies. So it's like if you're going to do little like young trees, maybe get 20 instead of one, because that way you'll always have something to pick at.
It's a great
point. Of them. Yeah. And get something that likes to be picked at. That's the other thing.
Exactly. Yeah. I actually teach that they should all start with 10 projects, to make sure that they can cycle through them and not get the itchy fingers. So
I'm not wrong to say when people walk in and they're like, how many trees do I get? And 10, 20? 10. I'm not trying to sell you trees. I'm trying to tell you how to get into this. And so you don't, like Carmen says, don't pick your tree to death.
Yeah. I'm trying to keep your trees alive.
If you're not feeling overwhelmed, then you're not practicing bonsai correctly.
Well, and I also tell them that
they don't crying at the end of the day. You're not practicing bonsai correctly.
Yeah, I tell them, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, guys.
It's okay.
Good.
We're just so funny.
So good trees. I'll while you're thinking, good trees to pick at are azaleas, ficus. God, I can't even remember now. Chojubai.
Oh
Black
God, if
pine
we
are fun
had
because you get to pick at them multiple times a year. You just have to pick at them at the right time.
if
Same
we
with
had
junipers.
Chichabai just like in abundance to just like pick at, that would be
Honestly, for tropicals, I would say Premna and sea hibiscus will
Mhm.
keep you kind of going. You're always, I'd say every couple days I'm snipping
Mhm.
something off of there.
Mhm.
How about some Chinese elm?
Oh
Holy
man, yeah.
crap.
Oh yeah. During the
Talk
growing
ab-
season, that'll keep you busy.
talk
Mhm.
about a tree there.
See, they don't grow as rambunctiously here. Or maybe the ones that I'm working with are just old enough
Interesting.
that they've slowed themselves
They've
down a little
they've
bit.
slowed down. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Oh, well,
young
that's a
ones though are bananas.
that brings
Totally
me back to
bananas.
the thing where I was mentioning older developed trees with more robust systems, root systems. They'll have more evenly distributed energy.
Mhm.
And they've also lost vigor. So they've old trees. An important thing to note on old trees is that we can't do the same things that we can do on young trees. That maybe that's something we should also throw into the episode is that
For sure.
we honestly always see these like big juniper bends and we see these people do this crazy stuff to material, and what we're not told is that the material was either prepped or it was young. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
if the material was prepped, then it was growing for several years to build vigor, or several months, or however long it needed to build the energy it needed to handle the work ahead. And old trees, you can't take an old juniper or an old elm that's been in a bonsai pot and pruned for 25 years and go and wrap it in raffia and bend it in half. It's not going to have the same results as if you spent the time to plan it out and build vigor into the tree.
Yeah.
So that's a valid point too that I didn't even think about, new versus old, is that you can, with younger material, at least, beginners wouldn't know what to do with it, but you can be more aggressive with that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can go in with a younger tree, like a young Chinese elm, and just bend it into a corkscrew. And
Yeah.
then your older guy over there, his living tissue, his branches, everything is just, it's been pruned 1,000 times. So the branches might
Right.
even have uh, hollow heartwood, nothing there. There might be the branches can't even bend like that anymore. And that's a good thing to say. And you can restore vigor in that tree, but then you'll revert it back to its formative, just dense, crazy mess of a weed of like type plant. Well, I'm talking about Chinese elm, of course.
Yeah.
Some other species are different. But then and this would be just another closing comment on it, that was kind of on my mind a little bit. What if we took like an older tree and we grafted younger stock onto it? Could we treat that tree? Mike, you do a lot more grafting than I do.
I
Would
don't
you
think
treat
so.
that differently?
No, because the graft's vigor is dependent on the tree that it's grafted to. And so, like, if I graft it to a weak tree, then the graft will be very weak. So you can't, yeah, it won't like transfer over the vigor, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah. If you wanted to do that, the recommendation would be to maybe like up pot it a little bit, try to get vigor into the old tree before you were going to do any big work like that.
Exactly.
So you could, but again, it'd have to be prepped. And I think one of the things I think that the differences between old and young for me that I found confusing as I was learning both is that you use similar techniques on both, but kind of what you're doing, you use them in very different ways, it seems, to build a tree versus maintaining a tree.
Mhm.
So I guess you have to consider what you think bonsai is or what your goals are in bonsai. Do you want to maintain big old trees? Do you want to build trees? Where do you fall kind of on that spectrum when you're getting
Great
into
point.
it? Because it's,
Great
again,
point.
you're wiring little trees, you're wiring old trees, but the way you're doing it and why you're doing it and the amount that you're doing it is totally different.
Well, and you touched on a great point, is some people are just going to be collectors.
Yeah.
Some people aren't gonna pursue this to learn how to grow something from the ground up. They're gonna pursue more advanced material. They're gonna buy collection trees, specimen trees, and they're gonna maintain and work with those trees. And I have a lot of customers, a lot of clients that are specimen only people. They really don't, all they have is a maintenance level knowledge of the trees, and they don't want to know how to build a
Right.
tree from scratch. They have
Yeah.
no interest in that, and I totally get that. That's a valid point. When you're dealing with a project that can spend hundreds of years, at what point do you want to jump in?
Yeah.
So
That's a good way to look at it. Like, yeah, what point are you jumping into this tree's life?
Right. You're not
project,
going to
yeah.
finish it in 20 years. So if you
Mm-mm.
start in at the beginning, you're only seeing the first 20 years, so
Welcome
it's
to the art of impermanence, basically. Yeah.
yeah, there you go. That's it. Wabi sabi.
Yeah. So yeah. That's some good stuff, guys. I'd like to thank our Patreon subscriber Carmen for that great question.
I would love to know what
Oh,
her handle
You're
was.
welcome.
I think it's just Carmen. Let's go with the answer.
Oh, is it? Oh, that's boring. Hold on.
Yeah, I
I'm
thought
gonna
it was
I
going
wanna
to be
go
something
find.
funny.
Is
could
it
have been.
not?
I
Oh,
don't
hold
know.
on. I gotta look it up. I'm gonna look
You
it up.
created your account. I don't know.
I don't know what it is.
So as an interesting close to our episodes, we can I think I messaged this to you earlier, Mike. Let's do the bonsai word of the day or a bonsai word of the week. We'll take like a term that it would help us all kind of learn a little bit, and also our listeners as well, and just kind of define that word real quick as an ending note on each one.
Can we do Yamadori since we kind of already brought that up?
Yeah, Yamadori can be the bonsai word of the day. We're not going to go into detail. We're just going to describe what it is, and we'll make sure that all the listeners are familiar with the word, and we can build our vocabulary here in bonsai. So Yamadori, who wants to define that word? Not
Sorry, I'm
everybody
still
at once.
Googling myself.
No.
Yeah, I'm just boring. I'm just Carmen.
No, no.
Great information, Carmen. Boring as ever. No, just joking.
So Yamadori to me, I will go ahead. Of course, I got to be verbose and I got to like give it this big old thing.
Yeah. Do
Yamadori,
do the Mike Lane thing.
The Mike Lane thing, Yamadori. I'm a stickler for this because I hear it used all the time for material that shouldn't be called Yamadori, and I know that sounds harsh, but the reality is the translation is that it's a mountain tree. It is a mountain tree. And so more realistic or a more realistic way of thinking about it is it should be a tree that you cannot grow in your lifetime. So it should be a tree that grew in conditions that grew the tree so slow that if you were to try to repeat those efforts, you wouldn't live long enough. That's the point of Yamadori is hunting down these environments that grow these trees into dwarfed trees. And so why are they so valuable? Because you have old wood that now will last hundreds of years. Mm-hmm. So Yamadori, I'm a firm believer, mountain tree or similar like trees.
Excellent definition.
Not just the dug up tree.
We're gonna make a whole vocabulary book. We'll go verbatim and like write down what each of us give for definitions. Mike, you get that one because you were like so ready to answer that one. But
it's something I think about a lot.
I'll get the next one, buddy. And guess what? We'll do Yamadori next episode just for you. If we don't have any guests coming up, we'll do Yamadori next, I think.
Yeah, we should. Yeah,
and
very good.
That would be cool.
What would you call a tree you pull out of a swamp?
A Numadori.
No, I would still. It depends because some of those environments, like
if I may, not Numa, because Numa means swamp in Japanese. And if I'm not saying it right, and I thought I was clever doing Google Translate. But anyway, sorry to cut you off, Mike. Yeah, Yamadori could be swamp or field or forest collected. Okay. But this is for another episode.
Okay, sorry.
Don't want to spoil the listeners too much.
All right.
But anyway, he wants to talk about Yamadori so bad. So tune in next time. This was episode. I hope I didn't say the wrong episode number, guys. I'm so sorry. Now that
I think it was 45.
Episode 45. No, wait, scratch that.
73.
No,
yeah, I think it was 69.
Guys,
11.
Stop. No,
24.
I got it right the first time. This was episode 15. Young versus old.
I think you said 16.
Oh,
yeah, I thought he said 16.
This was episode 16. Yeah, the last one was 15.
This was an episode of Little Things.
Yeah, this was. Oh yeah, do you want to close us out on this one, Carmen? Go ahead.
Yeah, Carmen's got a great podcast voice.
Yeah, I've been told that it's very NPR. So go ahead, take us away, Carmen.
Oh no, I'm nervous. I can't do it. You do it.
No, we'll wait.
This has been an episode of Little Things for Bonsai People.
Excellent. That was great.
See you, everybody.
Yep. Y'all have a great one. See you next time.